The Clinton presidential campaign team shifting its outrage a bit from the alleged Russian hacking back to FBI Director James Comey. Comey is now the subject of an investigation being conducted by the Justice Department Inspector General. President-elect Trump addressed the Clinton camp today. He tweeted this, quote, "What are Hillary Clinton's people complaining about with respect to the FBI? Based on the information they had, she should never have been allowed to run. Guilty as hell they were. They were very nice to her. She lost because she campaigned in the wrong states. No enthusiasm." Take that. And joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and American Enterprise Institute Senior Fellow, John Bolton. John, great to have you. The President-elect is still a little annoyed about her what would you call it, hands-off treatment on the part of the FBI?
Look, as I've said before, I believe it still to this day. If I had done at the State Department what Hillary Clinton did, I'd be wearing an orange jumpsuit now. I mean, Comey mishandled this thing in so many ways by concluding inside the FBI and the Justice Department there were no grounds to indict her, by the famous first press conference where he said he was not going to recommend prosecution, and on and on. It's not just the last letter, it's the whole way he handled it.
Well, explain the politics to us. Here it is, a week to go, and they come out with an investigation by the Inspector General of what, as actually Donald Trump foresaw during the campaign. He said there ought to be an investigation of the investigation, and I'll be doggone if we don't have an investigation of the investigation. They waited right up to the last week, and apparently Attorney General Lynch and her conduct with the former President Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix to discuss the case, or their grandchildren, if whichever you believe, is not part of the inquiry.
Well, I wonder, coincidentally, how that happened. Look, this Inspector General in the Justice Department is an Obama administration appointee. This is a
No,
political
you're not suggesting
device.
Politics here, are you?
No, heaven forbid. But that's exactly what Jeff Sessions needs to help clean up.
Man.
It's just been a tragedy for our country and a danger for our country. The justice and one of its subordinate parts, the FBI, has been politicized the way this has been over the past 8 years. I understand why Sessions recused himself from any possible consideration of criminal action against Hillary Clinton. I think that was the right thing to do.
I think it's also a very smart thing to do, by the way.
Yes, exactly, and he'll be confirmed as he should be. But he needs to show leadership in restoring the reputation and the reality of integrity in the Department of Justice and the FBI. That's an urgent matter for him.
Yeah, putting his name just outside the door there at Justice will go a long way toward doing exactly that. And I am certain that his leadership will do precisely what you say, and that is restore integrity to a department that has been just overwhelmed by politics. Let's turn to John Kerry, who in his final week as Secretary of State is on his way to Paris with 72 other countries present to talk about Mideast peace, but the parties, that is the Palestinians and the Israelis, aren't there. How in the world could this be happening in the final week of an administration with U.S. participation?
Well, look, that's why I think these last 7 days may be the most 7 dangerous days in the entire administration. People are very concerned that this conference in Paris on Sunday will issue a declaration that tries to define the terms of a peace settlement between Israel and the Palestinians. They'll rush it back to the Security Council in New York, and one more time, Barack Obama will stick it to the State of Israel. It defies 50 years of bipartisan American foreign policy, which has said only the parties to the dispute.
Let's take the worst case. Let's say that's exactly what transpires, that is the result. What should Donald Trump do when he steps into the White House on January 20th?
Well, if it's as bad as we think, and you combine that with Resolution 2334, which effectively tried to set Israel's boundaries, done 2 days before Christmas, I think Donald Trump could do a lot worse than using the words of Daniel Patrick Moynihan when the General Assembly passed a resolution equating with Zionism as racism, and say the United States will never accept these resolutions. Hear that? United Nations. And you had a clip on earlier of Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz introducing legislation to cut off U.S. funding to the UN because of that first resolution. Here we see the UN bringing old adversaries together. It's an amazing way that it works. I think the only thing they respect is our money, and I think Donald Trump should seriously consider supporting the Cruz-Graham legislation and cutting off our money.
Let me ask you this, former ambassador to the United Nations. This is an institution that has, in the rarest of moments, has been useful to the international community, if I can put it that way. It is not, one of those moments has not been very recent. It is an absolute obstacle to peace processes in the Middle East in nearly every instance. It is nothing more than an incredible nuisance to U.S. foreign policy. Why the heck not just defund the whole thing, get it off the island of Manhattan and move on? With a new idea, a new organization, a new thought, because this is really, this makes everyone associated with the United Nations look like fools. And by the way, in the General Assembly, they look like anti-Semitic fools.
Well, there's no doubt there's a lot of anti-Semitism. Remember the words of Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste. I think this is an opportunity to move the entire UN system to purely voluntary funding from the U.S. and everyone else, to end the taxation of the United States, which we face through the assessed contribution system. And so there's a real opportunity here for the incoming Trump administration to send a tsunami through the halls of the UN.
Would you go so far as to disband the United Nations?
No, you know, Jeane Kirkpatrick was once asked if the United States should withdraw from the UN, and she thought for a minute and said, no, it's not worth the trouble.
Well, it's certainly not worth the trouble of being part of it either in most instances. I've got a great idea. Why don't we add it to the list of possibilities for Gitmo, as the number of detainees have dwindled? No, I'm just kidding. Ambassador, thanks for being with us. John Bolton, appreciate it.
Thank you, Lou.